Hi, I'm going to argue in this YouTube that Hiki-Te does produce power, or more precisely, it can. Why am I the guy to tell you this, when I don't actually know that much about karate? Well, I've published biomechanics in a peer-reviewed journal, and I realize that the argument around the bench press and Hiki-Te are actually very similar. I'm going to catch you up to speed with the bench press debate with this clip from YouTube's exercise scientist, Dr. Mike.
Some people will bench press guillotine style, where they take a higher position on the chest and they let their elbows come up. They feel a huge stretch in the pecs. Their shoulders feel amazing. No problem. Correct answer. Other folks will touch a little bit below the nipple line, actually on their abdomen, and they will tuck their elbows on the way down. You'll see this from shoulder pressing back in the day, from equipped powerlifting. If that is what hits your pecs the most, and it makes your elbows and shoulders feel nice and comfy and safe, beautiful, right answer. What I don't want you guys to get caught up in is people on the internet who say this is bad because biomechanics. I don't know why the fuck they say that, because if you go out here, notice my pecs are getting more stretched as I pull out. There's lots of people saying you gotta tuck in the elbows to do more chest. That's fucking backwards.
You might have noticed that the quote-unquote fucking backwards way of benching more resembles Hiki-Te. And Dr. Mike is right in saying that it doesn't use more of the chest, but it can produce more power. The path of the bench press is different in elite lifters compared to novices for this reason. This isn't a debate between biomechanics and the internet. This is a conflict between conventional biomechanics and observation. If you will bear with me, I can explain this from the cellular level on up, and you will realize that Hiki-Te is a position of power, not because it utilizes the pectoral muscles, but because it channels the power of our ancestors. Actually, no, sorry, because it utilizes the latissimus muscle. So, reading from my published journal article, which you can go look up, this new approach yields different predictions for the latissimus dorsi, which have major implications. When the arm is pulled passively behind the spine, tensing the latissimus is predicted to create forward motion of the arm via mostly conventional tension toward the 0 point, which exists in three-dimensional space. This likely explains the differences between barbell paths between elite versus novice weightlifters in the bench press, as elite lifters have learnt to incorporate and assist from the latissimus dorsi. It also highlights how much coordination is contributing to bench press output, which would otherwise be attributed to strength. So I said I'd explain this on the cellular level. So this is my proposed PhD thesis. If getting a PhD means I'm going to end up like Dr. Mike on YouTube, I'd probably rather just be shot in the head. So whether I actually do a PhD, I don't know. Just so you know, this isn't yet published, and I don't have a PhD. I'm not claiming any of that. But this is the theory. It's called curved filament theory for dummies. This comes with some free Velcro. In order to understand about curved filament theory, you first need to know just a little bit about sliding filament theory, which is how we explain how muscles contract at the cellular level. Within the muscle, you have different filaments that are overlapping, and they need to grip each other to pull each other along. So if the muscle is very stretched, there's not as much overlap, but if it's at an ideal place, it can have more tension. So I have here some Velcro to sort of demonstrate the theory. So if it's stretched long, there's less overlap and it's easier to pull. Whereas if there's a lot of overlap, it's harder to separate them. But all of the models just work with a version of the muscle that is perfectly straight and linear. What I want to ask is what happens when it's curved? So the relaxed muscle has shear movement among these filaments. And we know that the inside of a curve is shorter than the outside of a curve. So when it's relaxed, that's not much of a big deal. But when we stick these together, the Velcro can resist shear movement. It's not the same as the muscle because the muscle is actively pulling itself together and along the filaments. But nonetheless, even with this very imperfect analog, when I push these together, they're pushing apart my fingers slightly. And I mean, you can see that it's come undone over here at this little bump here because it's pulling out. That wouldn't happen on a real muscle because it would be a lot stronger. It wouldn't be able to do that. So it would be producing more force outwards. That's not true, or at least it's not as true, when they aren't facing each other because it doesn't produce as much force. To prove that this does relate to the muscle fiber, I'll just demonstrate this with the pec. So I got my arm out here. Those filaments are stretched from the origin to the insertion. I tense the pecs and the arm comes in, but it can only come in so far. So what I'm going to do now is relax the pec, pull my arm across like this. So now those filaments are curved. What happens when I tense? It goes out. The same is true of the lat muscle. So when it's relaxed, I can have my arms back here, but then I tense them, they come out. So the answer of where does the pec go towards, it's not the origin, it's this particular point here. The same is true of the lats. And the same is also true in any dimension. So if it's back here, the lats pull forward and the pecs also pull forward. So you've got both going on at once. If you don't know this and you don't have a feeling for that, you're just going to do this and say, oh, that's not producing more power, instead of that.
This YouTube was made possible by a commenter on a previous YouTube I did, so thank you, Scott Dennis, for pointing this out to me. And if you like what's going on here, please like and subscribe.